What keeps you awake at night? I would like to think that all the things that keep me awake at night are truly important things. My family and their safety, the future of our country, God and the work that needs to be done in His kingdom. But I'll admit to you something, that the thing that keeps me awake at night most often is probably the most unimportant of all concerns. Money. Does money ever keep you awake at night? Worried that you won't have enough? Worried that you can't get a bill paid? Worried that no matter how much there is in your bank account, that there is always something on the horizon that you're going to have to pay for, something unforeseen, buying new tires for your car, a new air conditioning unit, braces for your kids, or an unexpected medical emergency. And so we worry about money, and we worry about savings, and we worry about taxes, we worry about our bills, and we worry about paying for all of the exciting things that we dream of having, that we wish we could have, and that we know that we'll never be able to afford. So every time we stay awake at night, every time we wake up early, every time we spend any waking moment concerned about money, I believe that we are making the mistake of feeding the money monster. Now, I get the term money monster from an unlikely source, myself. I like to make up funny songs for my kids. I don't know if that's something that you know about me, but if you've ever been around me for any length of time around my kids, especially in our home, we have a lot of silly songs that we sing. We don't sing the typical nursery rhymes mostly, but we make up songs. And I made up a song a few years ago after Sterling told me about a dream he had about a money monster that ate all of his money. So I made up this song, and I won't sing it for you, but I will tell you the lyrics of the Money Monster song. Oh, I'm the money monster, and I'll eat all of your cash. Give me all your coins and dollars, even those in your secret stash. Oh, I need all of your money. It's the food that I want. Oh, I'm the money monster. It's a fact I gladly flaunt. And I hope that even as a 6-year-old, Sterling is learning the danger of feeding the money monster. The more you feed the money monster, the more he wants and the more he takes. And he will always take, and take some more. We cannot live for money. Those who have too much of it are not concerned about the spiritual things, just as Jesus said in the parable of the man who built bigger barns for himself, who had so much wealth and so many possessions, he had to build bigger barns. And at the end of all things, when God came to him that very night in judgment, He said, "You did not concern yourself with the things relating to me." And your soul was lost. Those who have no money are concerned about getting it. And they dream and pine away about all the things that they want and wish that they have and couldn't afford. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 23 and notice what the Bible has to say about money in Proverbs 23 verses 4 and 5. As it says, "Do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. When you set your eyes on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies toward the heavens." When I was 17 years old, I couldn't even imagine having $1,000 in my pocket. Could you? At 17 years old? What was $1,000 to you? $1,000 might as well have been $1 million when I was 17 years old. And now I'm cutting checks for $1,000 right and left like it means nothing. And the more stuff you have, the more you have to maintain it. You have to buy the house and pay the mortgage. But on top of all that, you have to pay all the bills for having the house. And you have to pay the insurance on the house. And you have to pay to fix the house. And sure, buying a car would be great, but you know it doesn't stop there, right? You could buy a car, but then you've got to pay to put gas in the car and pay to maintain it and pay to fix it when it breaks and pay for the insurance on it. And pay the ticket if you get in trouble by driving too fast in it. Not only are you buying things with the money, but you're also maintaining things with the money. And the more you have and the more you own and the more money you have, the more it just seems to sprout those wings and fly away. Of course, Solomon talked about that frequently in the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is basically his recollection on life. A man who had incredible wisdom and unimaginable wealth, who looked back on a life spent in vanity. And his conclusion was, why waste it all on nothing? Money is vain. Stuff is vain. Entourages are vain. And the more you have, the more of an entourage you get. And you find yourself surrounded by moochers who only want to take more from you. I couldn't imagine at 17 years old what it would be like to be a 33-year-old paying bills so frequently, but it is so true what Proverbs says. Money sprouts wings like an eagle, and it flies away. As soon as you get it, it seems to be gone. What a vain thing. Now you might think, with all of that being said, that I'm telling you that money is bad, and that must be some monolithic lesson that we take away from the Bible, that money is a bad thing. I'll put it this way. Money is neither good nor bad. It simply is what it is. Like a rock that you find on the ground. There's a lot of things you could do with that rock, right? You could build something with that rock, or you could hit somebody over the head with it. The rock itself is neither good nor bad. It just depends on how you use it. Money is the same way. It is an inherently amoral thing. It is neither good nor bad. Now, the very same Bible that warns us against the dangers of money also extols its usefulness in certain contexts. Go to the book of Ecclesiastes. The very book I mentioned earlier that repeatedly calls money a vain thing also says in Ecclesiastes 5 and verse 18, "Here's what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and to enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward." Now, whether you're eating much or eating little, or earning much or earning little, the commandment is, whatever it is that you're getting, enjoy it for what it is. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, He has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift of God. For he will not often consider the years of his life because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. He says a very similar thing back in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 24 through 26. In particular, notice verse 25. Who can have, or who can eat, and who can have enjoyment without God? That's the qualifier, isn't it? God says you're allowed, if you happen to have money, by some kind of coincidence in life, if you happen to have money, if you've worked very, very hard and you have received a reward because of it, it is okay to enjoy the benefits of it, if you have it. Just make sure you keep in mind where it all comes from. Make sure you keep in mind who it is that created this world that has allowed you to work and labor as you do, who has made the resources from which you have gained that wealth. It is all from God. And if you can't keep God in mind, you might as well have never had any money at all. In Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28, in this great passage that talks about our old life versus our new life in Jesus Christ, he compares and contrasts the way that our old life changes and is transformed into something new. And he says in verse 28, he says, "Let him who steals steal no longer, but rather let him labor, performing with his own hands what is good, in order that he may have something to share with him who has a need." So if you have a job and you are working and earning money, God says, good for you. Make sure that you're sharing it, though. Make sure that you're sharing it. So it's not like money is always a bad thing. Money can be used to help other people. And money can be used to derive at least some superficial enjoyment out of this life. Though I think we would all agree, and the Bible contends, that the greatest joys in this life have nothing to do with money at all. But for what it is, limited as it is, vain as it is, it does offer some degree of enjoyment in this life. We can't live on earth without it. In a practical sense, I suppose you could come up with some hypothetical scenario that says, well, if you had all the survival skills in the world and you made your own tools out of stones and you lived out in the wilderness up in Prescott National Forest or something, you wouldn't need money. Okay, I get it. Fine. But for 99% of the rest of us, in every practical sense of it, you can't live on earth without money. Now, whether it's charity or money that you earn yourself, the fact is that we can't live in a practical sense without it. But we can't live for it. You see what I'm saying there? You can't live without it, but you can't live for it. Since our lives always take on the qualities of the things we long for most. Go to Psalm 115, verse 8. And in Psalm 115, he's talking about idolatry and the way that people tend to fall into idolatry and they fall in love with the things that they create, the product of their own hands. And he says, summing up that idea in Psalm 115, verse 8, those who make them, that is idols, will become like them. Everyone who trusts in them. Throw in 2 Kings 17, verse 15, and they followed vanity, and they became vain. I love those two verses. When you follow vanity, when you love idols, you become exactly what you love. You become what you follow. And if you're living for money, you will become like money. Superficial, empty, vain. That's true of any idol that we present before our eyes. And we talk about money, but really, it's all part of a network of problems, isn't it? Because money is just part of the problem of the career-driven person who puts career ahead of God, who puts career ahead of morality. It's all part of the problem of the person who loves possessions. They might not love the money itself, but they love what money can get for them. The things and the status symbols of this world. So money is just part of the problem. But if you love money and you love stuff, and you love a career, and you love entertainment, well, you're going to become just like the things that you love. Vanity and vain. So why do we find money so enticing? If it is like this, if it is such a dangerous commodity that has a few redeeming qualities and some usefulness, but so many problems, why do we find money so enticing and so tempting and so engaging? And why do we fantasize about it to the point that it ruins our lives and our relationships? And I think at the core of it is greed. Greed always promises a level of satisfaction that it cannot deliver. There's a Hindu proverb that I really like that says, to try to extinguish the drive for riches with money is like trying to quench fire by pouring butter over it. That's the money monster, isn't it? The money monster follows you around. And every time you feed it, it just gets hungrier and hungrier and wants more and more from you. And it's not just a Hindu proverb that says this. The Bible corroborates it as well. But the Bible confirms the idea that dissatisfaction and the desire for more always just leads to greater dissatisfaction and the desire for more. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5, in what is an absolutely beautiful passage in the second half of it, presents a problem in the first half, saying, let your character be free from the love of money. But he says, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. Now, money can't make you the same promise. Money can't make you the same promise. One of the biggest problems with money is that it's kind of closed-ended. There's only so much of it, right? If I have $1 and you don't have $1, you don't have that dollar. I own it, I hold it, I possess it. Now, I can give you that dollar and you'll have the dollar and I won't any longer. Or I can divide that dollar up and I'll have 50 cents and you'll have 50 cents. But the thing about money is, money doesn't multiply. It's closed-ended. If you have $1,000 in your bank account, you have $1,000 in your bank account. And it can't promise you anything more than that. It's a closed-ended blessing. And that's why God says, I will never desert you. I will never forsake you. I will never leave you. You don't have a finite amount of God in your life. You don't pay your bills on Sunday in God relationship terms and then wake up Monday morning going like, phew, boy, that was rough. I didn't know if we'd make it through the day or not. You don't end up as a 75-year-old seasoned Christian and say, I'm getting to the end of it and there's nothing left in the tank. No, rather, God and faith in Him, belief in Him, love of Him, sharing that love with other people is something that continues to multiply in your life, unlike money. Luke chapter 12 and verse 15. This is Jesus' own commentary on money, where He says here in Luke 12 and verse 15, beware and be on your guard against every form of greed, for not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. No matter how much you have, it still doesn't make up who you are. Or Ecclesiastes chapter 2, going back to that great book in Ecclesiastes 2, verses 9 and 10. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. And one might think at that point that Solomon probably felt pretty good about himself. But in verse 10 it says, and all that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for my labor. But he says in verse 11, I considered all my activities, all the things that my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted. And behold, all was vanity, striving after the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Solomon could do what most of us could only dream of. That is to say, have whatever he wanted. And I love the way he puts it in verse 10. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. If I wanted something, I had it. If I asked for something, I got it. And that life was vain. And it was empty. I love the way Haggai puts it in Haggai chapter 1, verses 2 through 6. One of my favorite passages on money. Because again, when it comes to money and it talks about money flying away like an eagle flying away or a purse that has holes in it, I can really relate to those Bible passages, can't you? And in Haggai chapter 1, verses 2 through 6, the prophet says, thus says the Lord of hosts, this people says, the time has not come, even the time for the house of the Lord to be rebuilt. They had not bothered to rebuild the temple when they returned to Jerusalem from their Persian captivity. Then the word of the Lord came by Haggai the prophet, saying, is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses while my house lies desolate? Now therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Think about your life. Look at what it's really amounting to, what it is really worth. You eat, or you've sown much, but you harvest little. You eat, but there is not enough to be satisfied. You drink, but there is not enough to become drunk. You put on clothing, but nobody is ever warm enough. He who earns wages to put into a purse with holes. So, like a railroad conductor or engineer shoveling coal into the engine or the bowels of a train, we keep shoveling money into our lives. We shove money at our problems. We shove money at our relationships. We fill our lives with these things and the stuff and the possessions, hoping that it will just keep us going along for another mile. And what vanity it is, says God through the prophet Haggai. You eat and you're never full. You put clothes on and you're never warm enough. And you earn money, but your purse just has a hole in the bottom of it. It keeps spilling out onto the ground. So what I want to do with the rest of our lesson is consider the practical side of this, of how am I feeding the money monster in my life? What am I doing to continue to make the problem worse, to exacerbate the problem? Well, here's a few things, maybe some warning signs that if you look at your life and you're doing these things, you just might be feeding the money monster. When all of my life goals are framed in terms of someday when we have more money, fill in the blank. You ever talk about that with your spouse? Someday when we've got the money for it, we're going to go on that vacation. Someday when we have the money for it, we're going to get that car. Someday when we have the money for it, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to live in the nice neighborhood and we're going to get the nice house. Someday when we have money. Well, if that's all your dreams are, that's all your goals are, that's pretty sad, isn't it? Don't you have other dreams? Don't you have other goals? Don't you have a well of joy that you can draw from that doesn't have to be framed in terms of money? When all of our greatest dreams have to do with earning more money, and I can't do them until I earn more money, what an empty life we're going to have. You know, there's a lot of things you can do out there in the world that's absolutely free. Places you can go that don't cost you a fortune. Things you can share with your children that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg. We think that we have to take our kids on a big expensive trip to Disney World to show them that we love them. But you know, library books are free. And reading a free library book with your kid on the couch might mean more to him than a $5,000 trip across the country. We think that we have to buy our kids the most expensive of everything. But you know what kids really want is not a house full of stuff. They want a house full of love. And we all know they love the cardboard box more anyway. We think that money is going to be the answer. And it's not. And if you look out at your life and the things that you want to accomplish, and you're always starting every sentence with, someday when we have money, you're never going to accomplish a thing. How about this, though? How about when I've stopped enjoying all the benefits of money, yet I continue to seek it? Remember what it says there in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. If you have money, enjoy it for what it is. Keep it in its context. Enjoy it for what it is. But he does go on to say in chapter 6 as a warning, the very next set of verses here, in chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, this is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it is prevalent among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that his soul lacks nothing of all that he desires, but God has not empowered him to eat from them. For a foreigner enjoys them. This is a vanity and a severe affliction. Go back to chapter 13 chapter 5 and verse 13. I like this one. Chapter 5 and verse 13, along the same lines, there's a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. When those riches were lost through a bad investment and he had fathered a son, there was nothing left to support him. As he had come naked from his mother's womb, so will he return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. And this is a grievous evil. If you have wealth, but you don't enjoy it anymore, if you have wealth stockpiled away and you find yourself like Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Story, what a miserable life that is. How about this? When I'm hoarding my riches to my own hurt, like it says in chapter 5, verse 13, failure to share, I think, is one way that happens. When you're hoarding your possessions to your own hurt, it means you're not sharing your possessions with others. It means that you're obsessed with get-rich-quick schemes. You're always throwing all your eggs into one basket, thinking that just one more investment, one more job, and that's going to be the thing that'll finally set me free. Or looking for the big payday all the time. Never just getting a job and earning from day to day to day. When I constantly respond to requests for charity with, go get a job and earn your own money. I wonder, is that why God has empowered us to gain wealth in this world? To tell someone else to go away and leave me alone and get your own money? I think Pink Floyd did a song along those lines, didn't they? When I begin to resent my possessions because they make terrible substitutions for real people. So I spend my life earning money so I can buy a nice car and have a big house and live in a nice neighborhood and have a flat screen TV, but the flat screen TV and the car and the house don't love me. And they don't care about me. And they're not there for me. So I begin to hate them. I'm angry at them. I resent them. When I'm constantly going from one job to another or uprooting my family frequently in search of some mystical dream job that I promise you doesn't exist. Every job has problems. Stop moving your family around. Stop uprooting everybody. Stop going from job to job to job. Few suggestions then as we bring our lesson to a close. Just a few things to think about. Remember, you can't take any of it with you. You can't take any of it with you. But how you leave your money behind does make a difference in the judgment day. Isn't that kind of interesting? Kind of ironic, isn't it? I can't take my money with me to the judgment day and show God how much of it I have. But God is going to point at my life and look at how much of it I left behind to other people. That's what impresses God. We can look in Matthew chapter 25 when God parts those on the right and the left, the sheep from the goats. What is the criteria that He's looking at? Among other things I think the New Testament points out, but what is the criteria in Matthew chapter 25 about those who are going to be saved and those who are condemned to hell? Well, the criteria in that passage is, did you share? Were you charitable? Did you give? Because in the way that you feed and clothe and give drink to those who are in need, even the least of those in this world, Jesus says, you did it to me. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Of course, we can read earlier in the chapter in verses 6 through 10 about the dangers of money, the love of money, and how the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and some by longing for it have destroyed their souls. But he says later on in the chapter, beginning in verse 17, again, after telling about the dangers of money, he does say in chapter 6, verse 17, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God who richly supplies us with all good things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. This isn't life indeed. In case anybody hasn't told you yet, in case anybody didn't fill you in, this is not life indeed. No matter how nice this life is, it is not life indeed. And if you want life indeed, learn to get rid of your stuff. In Matthew chapter 19, the rich young ruler couldn't do that. When Jesus said, the one thing that you're lacking, the one thing you must do to be a part of the kingdom, sell your possessions, give them to the poor, and come follow me. And with a grimace on his face, the man turned around and walked away because he had a lot of stuff. I can't take it with me, but I better learn how to give it away in this life. Second, I'll never have enough money, but I can be unimaginably wealthy. Earlier in our worship service, the scripture reading was from Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus talks about two kinds of riches. He says, don't lay up for yourselves riches on earth, the treasures of this world, because moth and rust destroy those things, and thieves can break in and steal them. Rather, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust cannot destroy, where thieves can never break in and steal. And he warns his readers, you can't serve two masters. You either serve money or you serve God. Money can be a means to an end, but it should never be the end. Don't live for money. If anything, live for what money can do. Live for the charity you can do with your money. Don't live for the money itself. Live for what your money can do to provide for your children, not the money itself. Live for what money can do to help you pay medical bills and continue to be a father or a mother, a husband or a wife, a member of this church, not the money itself. Money is a means to an end, but not the end itself. What good is money if your family despises you? What good is that $5,000 vacation if your kids don't even like you the other 360 days of the year? Or as Jesus would put it in Matthew chapter 16, what good is the whole world if you lose your soul? And lastly, money is fleeting, so get over it. Money is fleeting. Get over it. Remember, like I said, when I was 17, I couldn't imagine having $1,000 in my pocket, and now I'm writing a mortgage check over here and a car payment over here and fixing an air conditioner over here and paying a medical bill over here. How can I complain or whine, right? By the way, I hate taxes too. Taxes are terrible. But you know what? Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And I guess if the money's got his name on it, Caesar can have it back. Money is fleeting. Get over it. You will live 60, 70, 80, maybe 90 years if you're fortunate and healthy and strong. But you're going to spend eternity having to live with the consequence of this life. And there is but one consequence. You'll either be in heaven or you'll be in hell. Which one do you want? I encourage you at this time to live for God, to put Him first in all things, to leave behind the longing and the desire for money, whether you have a lot or you have little. Love God most. Whatever need you might have, please come forward as we stand and sing.